I never thought I'd be that guy, the one whose marriage falls apart over some stupid, gut-wrenching betrayal. But here I am, writing this down because I need to get it out of my head and maybe find some clarity. My name's Mark, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. At first, everything seemed normal, easy, comfortable. We had a good life, or so I thought. I work as a corporate attorney, and Lisa's been a stay-at-home wife, taking care of the house, the dog, the occasional dinner with friends. She's pretty good at putting on that perfect smile, especially when she's lying through her teeth. Lately, though, I'd noticed small things, little shifts in her behavior that didn't add up. She was more cranky, snapping at me over minor stuff, avoiding me when I got home from work. At first, I just thought she was stressed, maybe bored or tired. Maybe it was me. But then I started noticing her phone more often, hiding it when I entered the room. She'd get defensive if I tried to look over her shoulder, and that's what got my suspicion going. You see, I have a pretty demanding job, especially with a big trial coming up. My client's innocence is riding on it, and I've been putting in crazy hours preparing my case. But even with all that, I could tell something was off. One night, she came home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. She told me she was at a friend's house, but her phone was buzzing nonstop with texts I couldn't see, and her stories about her day seemed rehearsed in a way that felt fake. I asked her about her phone, and she rolled her eyes, said she was texting her sister and some harmless messages, but I knew better. I started catching her in little lies, and it was eating me alive. Then came the big drop, literally. I was at my desk one night going over some court documents when I decided to check her phone out of curiosity. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe I'd find a stupid meme or a funny message. Instead, I found conversations with a man named Tom, an expert witness she'd been working with for her latest side hustle. That was weird in itself. Lisa, been trying to start some online consulting gig, but she'd never told me she'd hired anyone for it. What threw me off more was the tone of those messages. They weren't professional. They were flirtatious, a lot of innuendos, and clearly more than just business talk. I saw them late at night, in bed while I pretended to sleep, and my stomach dropped. I stared at those messages, trying to process what I was seeing. My mind raced, trying to convince myself this was just her usual bullshit. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The next morning, I followed her when she left the house. She was going to that coffee shop she always visits, but instead, I saw her walk into a nearby hotel, a place I'd never known she went. She stayed for a little over an hour, and I swear I saw her kiss someone goodbye in the parking lot. I was shaking, furious, and devastated at the same time. I didn't confront her then. I needed to gather evidence to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. I feel like I've been living in some kind of nightmare ever since. How could she betray me like this? We had fights, sure, but I never imagined she'd cheat on me, especially with this guy Tom, who was supposed to be helping her with her stupid little side project. It's like everything I thought was real is crumbling, and I don't even know what to do with the anger and the heartbreak swirling inside me. I keep replaying those moments, questioning everything. Was the good part just a lie? Did I ever really know her? And more than anything, I'm terrified that I'll never be able to trust her again. The thing is, I didn't just sit on this information. I'm not that kind of guy who can pretend everything's fine anymore. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. That night I waited until I knew she was asleep, then I snuck into the living room and grabbed her phone. I wasn't proud of it. I hate invading her privacy like that, but I was desperate. When I unlocked it, every message, every call, every photo, everything was right there in black and white. I couldn't deny it anymore. She was cheating on me, plain and simple. The worst part, the way she lied so easily. When I confronted her the next morning, she just glared at me with that bitchy smirk, trying to brush it off like I was overreacting. "You're crazy, Mark," she snapped, tossing her hair. "You're just paranoid. I was talking to Tom about work. That's all. You're imagining things." But I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes, and I knew she was lying. She acted so confident, so dismissive, but I'd caught her dead to rights. I was furious. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shake her and demand the truth. But I held back. Instead, I told her I knew everything about Tom, about the hotel, about the late-night texts. She pretended to be shocked, then started with her usual lies. "He's just a friend," she said. "Nothing happened and you're overthinking it." But I wasn't about to be duped by more BS. I told her she needed to come clean, that I wasn't going to accept her bullshit anymore. That's when she lost her temper. She called me controlling, jealous, paranoid. She said I was pushing her away and that I didn't trust her. It was classic Lisa, bitchy, defensive, and full of lies. That confrontation was a turning point. I felt a mixture of betrayal, heartbreak, and a burning rage I'd never experienced before. How could she do this to me? After all the years, all the plans we made, all the promises. It felt like my world was shattering into pieces, and I couldn't even be surprised anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted, had been sneaking around behind my back with a guy who was supposed to be helping her with her little side hustle. It was sickening. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Tom, sharing those intimate moments. Every second I was awake, I was angry, so angry I could scream. I started thinking about what I wanted to do. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to yell and accuse her of everything. But another part told me to be smart, gather more evidence, stay calm, and decide what's best for me. I've always been a logical guy, so I knew I needed a plan. I needed to get to the bottom of this mess. And I needed to do it quietly before she spun some bullshit story that I'd never be able to undo. Honestly, I was scared, not just of losing her, but of losing myself in the process. I'd been a stable guy, the one who always had it together, who could handle anything life threw at me. But this was different. It cut so deep. I kept thinking about how I'd trusted her, how I'd loved her all these years, and now I was faced with the reality that everything was a lie. My mind kept circling around one question: could I forgive her? Could I even look at her the same way again, knowing she'd been lying, cheating, hiding her affair? The thought of going through all this, of possibly ending things, was devastating. But part of me also felt a twisted sense of relief, like I finally understood what kind of person she really was. I haven't decided what I'll do next, but I know I can't keep pretending everything's fine. The betrayal hit me hard, and I can't unsee what I've seen. Every time I think about her, I feel this burning mix of hurt and anger. I want to believe in us, but how can I when she's so good at lying? I honestly do know if I'll ever be able to trust her again, and that terrifies me. The worst part, I don't even know if I want to stay or if I should just walk away. All I know is I need to figure this out soon. After that first huge blow-up, I tried to stay calm, but inside I was anything but. Every detail kept replaying in my head. Her sneaky late-night trips, those flirtatious messages, the way she lied with such ease. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. My mind kept going back to the moment I saw her kissing Tom goodbye in that parking lot. How could I have missed all this? How did I not see the signs sooner? The pain was overwhelming, and honestly, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. The next morning, I knew I had to do something more than just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I started digging. I needed proof, more concrete than just her words and a few messages. So I installed a tracking app on her phone, something I'd never thought I'd do, but I was desperate. I wanted to find out where she was going, who she was with. I wasn't about to let her keep lying to me. It was a small thing, but it gave me some peace, at least temporarily, because I started getting updates on her whereabouts. What I found out was even worse than I'd imagined. She'd been meeting Tom regularly, sometimes multiple times a week at different locations, hotels, restaurants, places she never mentioned. She told me she was out with friends or running errands, but the GPS data told another story. Her lies had been more elaborate than I thought. She even started missing days here and there, claiming she was busy, but I knew she was with him. My stomach turned every time I saw a new location. It was like some sick game she was playing, and I was the last to know. I knew I had to confront her again, but I wanted to be prepared. I collected all the evidence, printed out the GPS logs, saved the chat logs, and even recorded some of her secret calls. I was cold and calculated. Used to being a lawyer, I'd always believed in facts, evidence, proof. When I finally sat her down that evening, I expected her to break down or at least get defensive. Instead, she looked at me with that same bitchy, dismissive attitude and said, "You're overreacting, Mark. You always blow things out of proportion. You're just jealous because I'm doing better without you." That was a slap in the face. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she lie so blatantly? I laid out everything I'd found, the GPS logs, the texts, the hotel receipts. Her eyes widened for a second, then she scoffed. "That's all you've got, seriously? You think you can accuse me of cheating based on that? You're just paranoid. You're insecure. I don't know what kind of crazy game you're playing, but I'm done with this nonsense." Her reaction was so typical. She always had a way of turning her lies into some kind of victimhood. I could see the anger in her eyes, but beneath that, I also saw a flicker of guilt, maybe even fear. She knew how much I had on her, and yet she kept up her act, acting like I was the one making up stories. It made me realize something. She was good at twisting things, at hiding her true self. I wanted to believe she'd just been caught up in some stupid affair, but I also knew she'd been lying to me for months. That confrontation marked a turning point. I felt more determined than ever to get to the bottom of this, but I also knew I had to be smart. I couldn't just blow up and accuse her again. I needed a plan. I decided I'd wait, watch, and gather even more evidence. I wanted her to slip up, to show her true colors. At the same time, I started thinking about the end game. Was I going to forgive her? Could I even? Part of me felt like I was already starting to emotionally detach, blocking out the pain by pretending I didn't care. But I knew deep down I was hurting badly, and I was starting to realize that perhaps I'd been fooling myself thinking we had a good marriage. I felt numb most of the time after that. The betrayal was like a weight on my chest. I kept asking myself whether I should confront her again, whether I should just pack my things and leave. My pride was shattered, my trust broken beyond repair, but I also wondered if there was any chance to save what was left of us, or if I should just cut my losses and walk away. The worst part, I kept going back and forth, hoping she'd change, fearing she'd never be honest with me again, and knowing that I'd have to make some kind of decision sooner rather than later. The thought of living like this, constantly wondering if I could trust her, was unbearable. I needed to decide what kind of person I was going to be moving forward and whether I even wanted to stay in this mess. After a few days of spiraling in a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion, I finally decided I couldn't keep going in circles. I needed to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. I needed to be precise, calculated. So I kept digging, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I set up hidden cameras in the house, checked her phone obsessively, and kept tabs on her movements. I wanted her to know I was serious, that I was no longer just hurt, I was onto her. One evening, I caught her in the act. She was leaving the house after another meeting, looking way too satisfied with herself. I followed her discreetly, keeping a safe distance. She went straight to a hotel downtown and checked in. I parked across the street, watching her go inside, feeling like my world was crumbling all over again. That moment, standing in the shadows, I felt this overwhelming sense of betrayal, like I'd been sucker punched, and then kicked while I was down. The next day, I decided it was time. I sat her down again, this time with everything laid out on the table. I showed her the GPS logs, the hotel receipts, the recorded calls, and I told her, "I know you've been lying to me. I know about Tom. I know you've been sneaking around for months, and I'm done pretending I don't see it anymore." Her response, that same bitchy smirk, a glare that said she thought she was in control. "You're making a big deal out of nothing," she said. "I was just trying to help my business, and you're overreacting because you're insecure." That sent a fresh wave of rage through me. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her I'd had enough. I'd been patient, but I was done with her lies. I told her I was going to see a lawyer to get everything in order. I explained I wasn't interested in a messy affair, I just wanted the truth. And if she thought she could manipulate her way out of this, she was wrong. That's when she finally snapped, calling me all the names she could think of: controlling, obsessive, jealous. But I didn't care anymore. I was past caring about her excuses. I wanted to see her squirm. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd always been a composed guy, but now I felt like I was falling apart. The love I'd had for her, the trust I'd built over years, it all felt like ashes. I kept asking myself how I'd let things get this bad, how I'd missed all those signs. I wondered if I'd been blind or just stupid. Mostly, I wondered if I could ever look at her the same way again, knowing she'd betrayed me so thoroughly. At the same time, I realized I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I had to decide whether to fight for the marriage or cut my losses and walk away. Deep down, part of me still hoped she'd come clean, admit everything, and maybe, just maybe, we could try to fix this. But she was so defensive, so dismissive. She kept spinning her web of lies, and I knew that the only way forward was to be honest with myself. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sad because I was losing someone I loved, but relieved because I finally knew the truth. No more pretending, no more lying, just raw, ugly reality. And I was starting to see that maybe I deserved better than someone who could cheat and lie so easily, who could dismiss my feelings like they were nothing. I knew I had to make a choice. The question was, what was I willing to accept? The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever faced. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, but I also knew I had to get clarity about what I wanted to do next. I started mentally preparing myself for every possible outcome. Divorce, separation, maybe even trying to salvage what was left if she finally cracked and told the truth. But deep down, I knew that trust was already broken beyond repair, and that the damage was too extensive to fix with just an apology or some tears. I decided I needed to have one last serious talk with her, something that would seal the deal, one way or another. I arranged to meet her privately in a quiet coffee shop near our place. She showed up dressed to impress, with that typical bitchy attitude she always put on when she thought she was winning, but I could see the cracks in her armor. She was nervous, maybe even scared, but she masked it with her usual dismissiveness. I looked her straight in the eye and told her that I knew everything. The texts, the hotel visits, her lies, every detail. I told her I was done pretending and that I wanted her to be honest with me, right here, right now. That's when she finally snapped, her voice rising, full of venom. "You're such a controlling asshole," she spat. "You think I'm doing this because I want to hurt you? No. I was just bored and Tom was helping me with my stupid business. I never meant to cheat. You're just too insecure to." It. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Classic Lisa, blame-shifting, lying, pretending she was the victim. I told her she could keep lying to herself, but I wasn't going to be part of it anymore. I told her I was done, that I would be filing for divorce soon, that I was finished with her games. I could see her eyes darting around, trying to come up with some last-minute excuse, but I had heard enough. I knew the truth, and I knew I was better off without her. The emotional fallout hit me hard. I'd loved her, trusted her, built a life with her, only to find out she'd been betraying me the entire time. It felt like my heart had been crushed into 1,000 pieces. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, angry at her for doing this to me, and angry for how easily she lied and manipulated her way out of everything. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. Finally knowing the truth freed me from the endless cycle of doubt and pain. I started making plans. I spoke with a lawyer, began packing some of my things, and prepared myself for the inevitable separation. I knew I'd need time to heal, but I also knew I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. Every time I looked at her or thought about her, I felt a surge of contempt. How could someone I loved so deeply turn into this cold, manipulative person? I kept asking myself if I'd done enough, if I could have saved the marriage, but I knew deep down the answer was no. Not anymore. Looking back, I realize how much this has changed me. I've gone from trusting blindly to questioning everything, from feeling loved to feeling completely betrayed. It's a brutal lesson in how deception can hide behind a perfect facade. I won't lie, it hurts like hell and I'm still processing what happened. But I also know I'm stronger than I thought. I've learned that sometimes the only way to heal is to accept the truth, no matter how ugly it is. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts and don't settle for lies, because once they're exposed, there's no going back. Now I'm living through the aftermath, trying to piece everything back together. It's been a few weeks since I confronted her for the last time, and honestly, I feel like I'm still in shock most days. The sense of betrayal is still raw, but there's also a strange feeling of relief, Like I finally woke up from a nightmare I didn't even realize I was in. I've started therapy, trying to process all this mess, and I've realized how much I let myself get blinded by love, by hope, that things would somehow turn out okay. The hardest part isn't just the heartbreak or the anger, it's the realization that I was blindly trusting someone who was capable of lying so convincingly. I kept thinking, how could she do this? How could she turn out to be such a different person behind my back? But the truth is, she was always like this, I just didn't want to see it. Now I see her for who she really is, a woman who can lie without remorse, manipulate, and cheat with ease. And honestly, I don't regret discovering it, even if the process was brutal. I've learned a few things I wish I'd understood sooner. First, trust is earned, not given blindly. Second, don't ignore those gut feelings. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And third, no matter how much you love someone, you have to protect yourself. I let myself get swallowed up in the idea of a perfect marriage, and now I see that sometimes love isn't enough to fix a broken foundation. Moving forward, I plan to focus on myself. I want to rebuild my confidence, restore my trust in people, and learn to be okay alone. I've realized I don't need someone who lies to me or makes me feel small. I deserve a relationship based on honesty, respect, and mutual trust. My biggest takeaway: never be afraid to confront the truth, even if it hurts, because staying in denial only prolongs the pain. So yeah, that's my story. It's a raw, painful journey, and I'm still healing. But if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to remember, it's that you're worth more than the lies someone tries to feed you. Don't settle for betrayal and don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, be honest with yourself, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are. Because at the end of the day, the only person who truly needs to believe in you is yourself.